January 17, 1943, 27,000 feet above the frozen fields of northwestern Germany, the air is thin and bitterly cold. Inside the cramped fuselage of a Luftwaffe Bf-109, Oberleutnant Franz Stigler adjusts his oxygen mask and scans the pale winter sky. His gloved hands rest confidently on the control stick. He has shot down 4 American bombers this month alone. Below, the earth is a patchwork of snow and shadow. Above, contrails streak the stratosphere like chalk on slate. Then he sees them, a formation of B-17 flying fortresses, 30 strong, moving in tight geometric precision through the cloud-scattered sky. He smiles beneath his mask. Fat, lumbering targets, slow, predictable. The Americans, he's been told, are soft. Their gunners are factory workers and farmers hastily trained, unfamiliar with the brutal arithmetic of high-altitude combat. Easy prey. He banks hard to the left, throttle wide open, preparing for the kill. But what Franz Stigler believed that morning, what the entire Luftwaffe High Command believed, was about to collide with a brutal, bloody truth. When the United States entered the war in December 1941, the German military regarded American air power with thinly veiled contempt. The Luftwaffe dominated the skies over Poland, France, and the Low Countries. Their pilots were veterans, hardened by years of combat, honed in the crucible of the Spanish Civil War. The Americans, by contrast, were untested. Their bombers were large and heavily armed, yes, but the prevailing German doctrine held that no bomber, no matter how many guns it carried, could survive without fighter escort. And in the winter of 1943, American P-47 Thunderbolts and P-51 Mustangs did not yet have the range to accompany the B-17s deep into German territory. The bombers would fly alone. The Luftwaffe would feast. German fighter pilots had faced British bombers before, Wellingtons, Stirlings, Lancasters, and found them vulnerable. A lone bomber, no matter how brave its crew, could be stalked, circled, and dismantled by a skilled pilot exploiting blind spots and weak defensive arcs. The German pilots expected the Americans to crumble under the same pressure. They expected panic. They expected chaos. They expected the formations to scatter like frightened birds. They did not expect the boxes. The combat box formation, a staggered three-dimensional lattice of bombers, was an American innovation born of desperation and mathematics. Each B-17 carried 13 50-caliber machine guns. Alone, those guns covered some angles but left fatal gaps. But when 18 or 36 bombers flew in tight, overlapping formation, their fields of fire interlocked. A German fighter approaching from any angle would face not 1 or 2 guns, but dozens. The sky itself became a grid of intersecting fire. The air gunners, those factory workers and farmers the Germans mocked, had trained for this. They had drilled in freezing gunnery ranges across England. They had memorized lead angles and deflection shots. They had learned to fire in coordinated bursts, to layer their tracers, to saturate approach vectors. Franz Stigler does not know this yet, not fully, not until he closes to within 400 yards. The first bursts come from the waist gunners, then the ball turret, then the tail. Tracers arc toward him in brilliant, crisscrossing streams of light. His cockpit shudders as rounds punch through his wing. He brakes hard right, adrenaline flooding his veins. He had expected scattered resistance. Instead, he is flying through a storm of lead. He pulls up and away, heart-pounding, aircraft vibrating. Below, the American formation holds, tight, disciplined, unbroken. This was the reality the Luftwaffe would confront again and again over the frozen skies of Europe in 1943. The 8th Air Force logged mission after mission, and the statistics began to tell a story the Germans could not ignore. In the raid on Schweinfurt in October 1943, the Americans lost 60 bombers, but they shot down or damaged over 100 Luftwaffe fighters. The exchange rate was brutal for both sides, but the Americans could replace their losses. The Germans could not. German after-action reports began to shift in tone. Words like unexpected and coordinated appeared. Pilots who had once spoken of American bombers with derision now spoke of them with wary respect. The 50-caliber machine gun firing 800 rounds per minute became a symbol not just of firepower but of American industrial abundance. The Germans could not match the sheer volume. Each B-17 carried thousands of rounds. Each mission involved hundreds of bombers. The sky bled brass. The transformation was not merely tactical, it was psychological. The Luftwaffe had built its identity on speed, aggression, and individual skill. But the American approach was different. It was collective. It was methodical. It was relentless. The gunners in those cramped turrets were not aces. They did not seek glory. They sought survival. And in seeking survival together, they built something the Germans had not anticipated. A fortress not of steel, but of mutual dependence. Every gun mattered. Every man mattered. The formation could not hold if even one bomber broke away, so they stayed. They endured flak, they endured cold, they endured terror, and they fired. By the time long-range fighter escorts arrived in early 1944, the dynamics of the air war had already shifted. The Luftwaffe had lost its best pilots. Fuel shortages grounded squadrons. The American formations, once vulnerable, had become nearly untouchable. The laughter had stopped. Franz Stigler would survive the war. In his later years, he would write about that moment above Germany, the moment his assumptions shattered at 400 yards. He would describe the tracer fire as beautiful and terrible. He would speak with reluctant admiration of the Americans who refused to scatter. He would say they fought like men who believed in something larger than themselves. And perhaps that was the deepest truth. The combat box was more than a formation. It was a philosophy. It was the idea that strength lies not in the individual but in the collective. That freedom is defended not by lone heroes but by ordinary people standing together. That abundance of courage, of resolve, of 50 caliber rounds can turn the tide of history. The Germans had laughed at the American gunners, but the gunners had the last word, and they spoke it in fire.